So I'll do a little bit more on the derelict theme this week. Then I thought next week perhaps go on to another theme, which is flowers, is the next one we've got down to work on. Pleased? Good, good. So yeah, so last week I did demonstration of watercolour. This was just the idea of just taking a small detail and just using that as inspiration. So I basically used a little bit of that. Just a small detail to experiment with techniques really. So that's one of the demos from last week. So that's using watercolours. This week I thought I'd use my oils. So this particular painting was one I started many years ago. I can't remember how many. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago. And it's of a pin mill in Suffolk. There's these sort of derelict boats. So it kind of had a day's painting. I'd done one little painting. And then at the end of the day, made a start on this, but the light went down very quickly, so it was kind of pitch black by the time we walked back. So basically just ran out of time, but I was quite happy with it, the way it was set out. I always thought, you go work out from photos or go back and do another session. But so this morning I just did a little bit here, and I hadn't at the time thought to use palette knives, but it's been actually quite good fun and quite interesting because it's given it a different look to how it would have done if I just carried on with brushes. It's an oil painting, so I'm using the water mixable oils because you can't, once you start doing oils, you need to keep going with oils really. So I'll just do a little bit more. So some of the areas here, I was thinking, it kind of makes sense to work background to foreground really. So if I just did a little bit more in the sky, just do a little bit around here. And I quite like the way some of the underpainting sort of showed us a bit too bright, so I didn't want it that way. Right there. I quite like the way some of the underpainting kind of shines through. Let's just lighten that a little bit. So rather than have it just completely solid colour, that could be quite nice. And I just started darkening the top there earlier because I just remember that sort of feeling like it's going down, that sort of dusky feeling. So I was thinking rather than just have it this paler colour, which would have been slightly earlier in the evening, let's go a little bit darker at the top. And then I can use the knife to sort of blend that in. Perhaps use a clean knife as well. Some of these knives vary quite a bit. I find the cheaper ones aren't quite springy. So the more expensive ones, the better quality ones, you get a little bit more spring to them. So yeah, working a little bit with the sky. And you do seem to need quite a bit of either rags or tissue just to keep wiping them between colour mixes. And then a little bit the background. And again, this is quite I put it as a green, but it's really like a greyish green. So I'm going to add a little bit more grey to that. Just darken that. So just a little bit more grey in here. I actually like it, but I think it probably needs some darks in there too, just to make a little bit of contrast. Then the next step would be working with some of the water in. So I'm mainly using palette knives, but I've also found that I've got this little glue spreader that's quite handy too, because you're getting little crevices. And these kind of nylon tip paint spreaders have been quite interesting to work with. So I've got a whole collection of bits and bobs, including credit cards or rolled plastic cards. So it's quite a nice thing to just experiment with different ways of applying the paint. So I'll work a little bit in there. That's a little bit darker. Just do it there. And on there I'll put a bit more in here. You get these lovely sort of sharp edges with these implements. And the other thing is just kind of, as I say, just sort of scraping back into it so that you reveal a bit of the colours underneath as well. That has the effect of breaking up the texture and suggesting a texture. So it scrapes into there. Could then work into that though. I'll just do a little bit with I thought perhaps with a credit card to show you that a little bit. So getting things like long sharp lines, like the lines on the edge of the mast, if you've got colour mixed up, and then just getting, it's a matter of just getting enough on your bit of plastic so that you don't absolutely flood it. So I'll just go over that because I actually ended up smudging that a bit, just sharp that. And there's a couple of lines coming down this way as well. It's a very nice, easy way of getting a really sharp line. Not sure that's the right angle, but it's a nice and sharp line. And then there'd also be because the light's coming this way, we've got a little bit of a highlight on there as well. So let's just put it there. I'll go a little bit lighter as well. So a little bit of the white and other colours mixed in. Again, probably need a reasonable sized palette area as well. I'm sort of feeling like I need a bigger space to mix colours than perhaps if I was just relying on my brushes. So a little bit around the other way, a little bit of light catching those edges. I just think it helps to just kind of get that, lift that, just animate the surface a little bit. So certainly something I've got, and because I'm not too precious about this painting, it's a sort of old one, it's quite nice to have maybe something old that you're not entirely happy with, that you can just play around with and experiment with. So, yeah, any questions? Yeah, so if any of you want to use any of the materials here, I've also got lots of these oil paints, the water mixable oil paints, if you want to go with the water mixable oils. Okay. Yeah, the other thing I was going to mention is I sent out a little email about the holidays, which I think I mentioned last week. So there's the South Wales one, which is that one, happening in June, and I've also got an Italian one. There's a questionnaire there for anybody who's interested in the Italy one, sort of like trying to sort of planning a questionnaire. Also a leaflet, so that will be starting 14th of September. So if anybody's interested in those or a bit more information,